Welcome to the first episode of the Stick and Balls podcast. I'm Trey.
And I'm Archie Smith.
And today we're going to be talking about baseball analytics, bit of an introduction into it, why we love analytics, and why we're obsessed with it.
Yeah, just going ahead and previewing who we are. My name is Archie Smith again, and I am a senior here at the University of Nevada, Reno. I've been a baseball fan my entire life. The World Series just wrapped up. Fantastic timing to do this episode with my boy Trey here, and I'm a really big Giants fan, so seeing the Dodgers win the World Series kind of sucks. But it's okay, you know, they deserve it. But yeah, just a little bit more about me. Played baseball my entire life from age 5 to age 18, and just been super interested in the behind the scenes work of it all, and using analytics is something that I've done for a while. I write for a baseball blog on my own time, and I work with the AAA affiliate for the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Reno Aces. So baseball has been a part of my life, and it's going to be continue to be a part of my life.
Yeah, and I am Trey Kroll. I'm the host of this week's episode, and I'm much more into football and hockey and even college football. But to be honest with you, I feel like I can enjoy sitting down and watching any type of sport if it's a good game. You know, I'll sit down and watch a volleyball game, a soccer game, a baseball game. So today I'm going to get to kind of be more of a student of the game, which is very exciting. I don't watch too much baseball, but even just before we went on air here, just starting to learn about some of the baseball analytics and seeing some of the data visualizations. It's really exciting stuff. So we're excited to share that with you guys today. And this episode, we are going to be focusing a lot on, there's a lot of current events. Again, the World Series just ended maybe 12 hours ago, maybe a little more than that. And yeah, just kind of the basics of baseball analytics. So Archie, why don't you break that down for us? Kind of what is the basis of baseball analytics in your mind?
Yeah, to me, it's looking at numbers that are under the surface, not so standard as here's his batting average, here's how many home runs he's hit, here's how many RBIs you have. It's more than that. There's numbers underneath that people don't fully grasp. So looking at somebody's home runs. Okay, why does he hit home runs? What's up with his swing? What are his slugging percentage numbers and just kind of things like that help you understand what kind of player you're looking at. And all these different numbers can mean a million different things. It can imply somebody's having luck, somebody's getting unlucky, somebody's performing above how they normally have in the past or below, and why. And it's been crazy just to see the development, at least in my watching experience. Like, I was born in 2003, and people had no idea about, a little bit about baseball analytics at that point, but not nearly like anywhere close to how it is now. So jobs are being created because of it. There's teams have entire analytics departments that are super well funded, and the technology is just blown off the charts. And we're seeing the best baseball players now that we've seen in all of baseball history. And that's honestly thanks to analytics and being able to optimize somebody's body to perform in the way that they should and in the way that they can to be productive on the field.
I just think sports analytics in general is super interesting. And in a lot of sports, it basically tells the same thing, at least from what I understand. It says, hey, you see the basic stats. You see that, again, like you said, he hit 20 home runs this season. But you can dig deeper and really see what exactly he's effective at. And it's a lot about the process versus the results. And I feel like a lot of people are starting to realize, sure, the results might be great, but if the process is great, the results will be great a lot of the time as well. And I think that those two can kind of go hand in hand, and it helps people understand the game better, and it helps players, coaches, GMs understand how to maximize, their winning percentages, I believe. So
definitely. And like you said, the process is great, the results are great, and then they'll be consistently great if things are lining up. And that's what analytics will go for, the consistency and why this person is consistent versus why is he unlucky or inconsistent? Why is he underperforming?
So from my perspective, I've seen a lot of analytics in sports basically just kind of simplify the game. I know a big thing in basketball is now teams are taking a lot more 3-point shots because they simply realized 3 points is more than 2. So they're hey, if we can just maximize on these high scoring points, why not do it? So in your mind, how does that kind of apply to baseball? Almost that oversimplistic view, but it's still effective and it still works.
Yeah, when you said the thing about 3-pointers just there, my mind immediately went to home runs. And people are hitting more home runs now than they ever have in history. Teams constantly set records. In 2019, they broke the record. The Twins broke the record for the most team home runs in a season. And it's just the numbers have been getting crazier. Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs and set the single league or a single season American League record. Did that in Texas. It was really cool. Somebody jumped off of the pavilion to go try to catch his ball. It was pretty awesome. But like I said, yeah, with 3-pointers in basketball, it's going to be home runs in baseball. There's this thing called the 3 true outcomes, and that's a home run, a strikeout, or a walk. And these true outcomes is called this because it's just the pitcher and just the hitter and kind of the catcher because he has to stand there. But just the hitter and just the catcher or just the hitter and just the pitcher are involved. No fielding is required at all when you hit a home run, when you strike out, or when you walk. And so that like optimization there is something that people have been leaning into. So guys like Kyle Schwarber of the Philadelphia Phillies, he's really leaned into this kind of perspective. He hits 1 million home runs every year. He's set career highs and stuff. And he walks a ton, but he also is going to strike out a ton. So that value that you get created from the home run, looking back, comparing it to a 3-pointer again, you just can't, like a single is never going to be as good as a home run. And so leaning into power, like people have been starting to do now, is something that's really interesting. And reaching base via walks, and that's base runners are like you can't measure the value of a base runner. So stuff like that.
We're going to cut away here to talk to our good friend Nick Reed. He's on the executive board of Villanova's Sports Analytics Club, and he took some time out of his day today to teach us a little bit more about some baseball analytics.
Okay, so about our podcast a little bit. It's sports analytics, kind of like I texted you. We're going to go over baseball, football, and hockey for 3 different, well, we're probably going to do 5 episodes, but at least the first 3 are going to be those 3 sports, just looking at the analytics there. But I know you have baseball background and you're obviously interested in it. So just getting started, do you want to just tell us like who you are, how old you are, your major kind of stuff? I already know, but
Yeah. So my name's Nick. I'm currently a senior at Villanova University. I'm studying marketing and business analytics. So analytics was something I was really interested in. There's no like sports, any type of major here at Villanova. So I really wanted to find something where I could kind of get something that would support my sports analytics interest. But yeah, I'm senior now. I'm taking an R class for sports analytics now, and I'm going to take another one next semester. And yeah, I grew up playing baseball, so that was one of my biggest interests in analytics specifically. But yeah, that's just a little background. Yeah.
I guess like when exactly did you start getting involved with baseball? Was it something kind of, right from the get-go or?
Yeah, so I started playing, when I was, as far as I can remember, probably like 5, 6 years old. I never was amazing at it, so that kind of led me to kind of, sometimes I was watching on the sidelines from the dugout, and that's, you take you take an analytic approach to that, you start to think about, you know, if your coach makes a bad move, even though you, as a kid, you have no power, but you can think, hey, maybe I would have done something differently, and something could have done better. So then as I went up, played in high school, didn't play very much in high school. So that also kind of led me to think, hey, could this be something where, part of the sport is the people behind the scenes and something like that for every sport. So could that be something I'm interested in? And it ended up being something I was interested in. So
So your affinity for analytics started just like kind of from a young age, just thinking of like coaching decisions and stuff like that?
yeah, I would say definitely was big into math. And then I wanted something a little more applicable. I felt like sometimes, just sitting in math class thinking about, is this like all these like formulas and theorems and proofs and stuff like that? I don't really know how to apply this. So it was something I could kind of apply like stats to, specifically for baseball.
For sure. The reason I would say that I got into analytics side and advanced stats is just because it helps me like when I'm watching the game, like watching a Giants game or watching the World Series, I can look at these stats and be like, okay, that makes sense why that happened, or like why is this happening because he's supposed to be bad. And so do you feel that like it enhances your kind of viewing experience as well?
I think a lot, especially with the Dodgers just winning the World Series. Spoiler alert, if anyone didn't see that. I think the way that their manager Dave Roberts was able to navigate their horrible pitching, which I thought was like one of the worst in the playoffs, and just injury wise, because they were just decimated by injuries. But the way that they were working with matchups similar into the ways like the Tigers and Guardians did. But the way he was able to, put in the guys when it mattered most, because of all that data, even though it's not explicitly told to you on the broadcast, you can kind of think, oh, he's putting in this guy because of his history, and he's not putting in this guy because that guy sucked yesterday, or that's not very advanced, but
Yeah.
definitely all those decisions is cool to watch, specifically like in the World Series and stuff like that.
So I'd consider myself a beginner, honestly, just not a huge baseball guy, and especially not too big into baseball analytics. But if you were explaining kind of why and how Dave Roberts was effective in this series, how would you say that to a beginner, I guess?
Yeah, so I think definitely going into the series, a lot of people would have given the Yankees the upper hand in the pitching department, specifically their starters. Just Garrett Cole just had so much like veteran. He has so much experience compared to guys like Yamamoto that don't really have any experience at all, specifically in the playoffs, but even in the MLB. And I would assume that behind the scenes they're looking at things like splits for hitters. So if a guy hits really well versus lefties versus righties, they could look at, does this guy get really good if he's seeing a pitcher multiple times? So if we see him in games 1 and 2, we put him back in for game 4, game 5, or is a guy really going to pick up on that and start to hit better and hit better? So I don't know specifically what they've been doing, but specifically on a matchup basis, I think handedness, amount of times through the order, and definitely on a pitch basis too. If guys are demolishing fastballs, demolishing off speed, kind of, especially specifically on a pitch by pitch basis, that could be a way that even if it's a bad matchup for a pitcher versus a hitter, that's a way that they can still have the upper hand through analytics.
Definitely. So I wrote a little article about the Dodgers bullpen a couple weeks ago. You might have seen it on my story or whatever, but I wrote about Blake Trinan, and he turned out to be like that guy in the World Series. He got the win yesterday through 40 pitches. So just like looking at his baseball savant and then writing about it and looking at his just like counting stats, his splits against people, like you could kind of see like this guy's nasty, like he's gonna have success. But I don't even think like I expected him to. He threw like 80 pitches over 3 games, and he hadn't been used like all year like that. And it's just
Oh
cool to
yeah,
see like Dave
I th
Roberts like feel it out and just be like, all right, this is my dude. Like I'm riding him.
Yeah, and I was really interested in yesterday because he went over 2 innings yesterday to look at that. I promise I didn't plan this or anything, but last night I was with my friends and we were looking at trying in how long he's gone in playoff games in the past, and he had actually gone 2018 with the A's. He'd gone over 40 pitches before, so that could be something you look at. Specifically, they're probably talking to him. They're probably saying, "Hey, would you be up for this? Would you be up for an extended role?" But they can look back and say, "Hey, this guy went scoreless, even if it was 6 years ago, through with 40 pitches. So he has the capacity to do that. So I think that's something interesting that obviously from inside the organization, you can just say, hey, do you want to do this? But if you're like an outsider looking in, you can think, oh, this isn't like some crazy longevity that he's never shown before. You can kind of look back and see what he's done.
For sure. Now, I think I heard Archie said you're in like a baseball analytics club at Villanova. How's
Yes.
that
Yeah.
going?
Yeah, so I've been in Sports Analytics Club all my 4 years. I'm on the exec board. It's really fun. Definitely helped me learn a lot. And it's kind of a good mixture of like business and professional development and also just like a fun club where we talk about sports and stuff. So I think it's a really good way to kind of mix because, like a general sports club, not you're not going to learn a lot. You're going to be up to date with current events and stuff. And then like an analytics club, you might not know like how to apply that or if it's super interesting to like just apply these analytics to like business problems or whatever. So being able to kind of mix like fun and play is something that's yeah, super fun.
Is that the kind of stuff you guys normally do? Like, what does a normal meeting look like for you guys? Do you look at actual like stats like WRC plus, OPS plus, or other sports as well? Is it kind of specific or is it in just general applying it?
Yeah, so we'll typically a meeting we'll go over recent events, sometimes bring up interesting stats that we thought maybe affected outcomes, or we'll do like a lot of predictions, like standings predictions, why we think these teams will do better than the other in all sports, not just baseball. And then also we'll do like specific like coding meetings where you're learning how to actually do the analysis that maybe people are using in these sports departments. So yeah.
What would you say like the most important thing is that you've learned about baseball through studying these analytics and advanced metrics?
yeah, I think definitely through studying the analytics and just really, really getting into watching these games, I think I think as a kid, I started to think that why aren't these guys just putting their always their best pitcher out? You know, why aren't they just using their guy, even if, he threw yesterday, but why aren't they using him right now or saving him till the ninth? Why are they bringing in Blake Trinan in the sixth inning? Even if he's been their best guy, why aren't they saving him? It's I think a lot of learning about the leverage and uh, ways to use pitchers. That's really why I was drawn to baseball because it's more like a strategic match where you really have to plan ahead and then adapt on the fly. So I think kind of learning past my initial assumptions of why, I've definitely know a lot more as I do now than when I was a kid, analyzing, coach's moves, like why is he putting that guy in and whatnot. So I think I've definitely learned a lot that way.
For sure. Well, that kind of does it for our end.
Yeah.
Appreciate you taking the time for us. And so we'll send you the podcast and everything when it's done. And yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me anytime.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Nick.
Appreciate it.
And now there's really only two sides of it to this coin, I guess, is it's basically just hitting analytics and pitching analytics, right? Like there's not a ton in between on like base rank. I'm sure there's a little bit for it, but
There's fielding metrics too.
fielding
but
too.
yeah.
But for the most part, we're kind of going to focus on like pitching and hitting today. I mean, that's kind of the core of the sport. So what exactly do pitching analytics tell us?
Yeah, so I think pitching is probably my favorite part of the game. I just love watching somebody perform on the mound and use like their arm angle, their different types of spin, their induced vertical break. There's so many analytics we can dive into. So one I want to kind of shout out is expected ERA. So ERA is earned run average over 9 innings. And so a 3 to a 3.5 ERA is considered good. But if you look at somebody's expected ERA, so online it'll be labeled xERA. This dives into their batted ball profile, so how people are hitting the ball on their pitches and where it's going, how hard, how many home runs they give up. So using those stats to justify an expected ERA. So what people are doing when you're on the mound is going to influence your expected ERA. While regular ERA, you can get unlucky and give up an earned run, like a dinky little base hit that scores 2 runs. You probably should have gotten it out based on how that ball was hit. But because it dropped, unfortunately, or your fielder lost it in the sun or something, like that should be an out, but it's not going to be an error. So those are going to be earned runs toward your real ERA. But looking at expected ERA, that's going to tell you the real story.
And so this kind of goes back to the whole like results versus process type of thing, especially in a sport as baseball where you have, 162 games in a season.
Yeah.
Like that's a large sample size throughout the span of that.
Yeah.
I really feel like the process of it is what's going to be important. Like you're saying, maybe the swinger just doesn't get great contact on the ball. Maybe it just falls. Maybe the outfielder makes a great play on it, and that makes your stats look better one way or another. But then when you get these kind of underlying stats that show the process rather than the results, you can really kind of get a look as to, is he actually playing well or is he just kind of getting lucky with how the batter's approaching it? Now, I guess on that note, let's talk a little bit about hitting analytics and what exactly do those tell us? How do players take that information?
Yeah. So 2 of the biggest hitting analytics statistics are expected, not expected, OPS plus and WRC plus, which stands for weighted runs created plus. And so these numbers, the plus at the end means that whatever the number is, like 100 will be average. So if somebody has a 120 WRC plus or OPS plus, that means they're 20% above average in those categories. And so this plus statistic is probably one of my favorites for on the hitting side because it compares things across eras too. So you can look at Babe Ruth's WRC plus and compare it to Barry Bonds. And so that plus metric will go all the way through like time. And so you can look at this number and be like, wow, he was 20% better and then he was 24% better. And so technically he would be the better hitter based on these stats. And so also for hitters, you can look at launch angle. You can look at average exit velo. You can pull up a guy like Luis Arias. He's optimized for like contact to the ball, and so his average exit velocities, his barrel percentage, his hard hit percentage, they're all super low relative to his teammates and people across the league. So He's actually a great example. I have his Baseball Savant page pulled up right now. And Baseball Savant, for people who don't know, it's a fantastic website. I recommend it heavily, but you can pull up any hitter, any pitcher you want, and their statistics are put on a percentile ranking. And so you can look at Luis Ariz, for example. His expected batting average, which is also another great expected stat, is in the 98th percentile. So he's hitting balls in places that are going to fall for base hits, and he's reaching base. But his average exit velocity and barrel percentage and hard hit percentage, the first one is in the 9th percentile, and the barrel percentage and hard hit percentage are in the 1st percentile. Obviously, you don't want to be in the 1st percentile, but he's reaching base. He had 200 base hits this year. He struck out like 3 times or something in the second half of baseball total, 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah, he was setting a lot of the baseball world on fire with that kind of stat. So yeah, for hitters, just again, like looking at what your swing, how to optimize it for better contact, and how you physically profile and how you can translate that onto the field and optimize your performance.
And again, I think I'm most well-versed, at least in analytics in the sport of hockey. I found that to be very interesting. And in the sport of hockey, you have these guys, Valerie Nijushkin, there's a bunch of guys from the old Tampa Bay Lightning teams that won some Stanley Cups who the underlying numbers were great for years, and then they finally get a chance to like prove it on a big stage and go win a Stanley Cup or whatever. And we call those analytic darlings. So is there kind of an analytic darling or any examples of that kind of come to your mind when we're talking about baseball?
So not so much a darling, but somebody that I have written about before. His name is Seth Lugo. He's a starting pitcher for the Kansas City Royals. And looking at his stats this is why I wanted to write about him. It was insanely, like, he's overperforming by so much that it was such an anomaly. And he had a fantastic year, a 3.00 ERA in 206 innings. I think he led all of baseball in innings pitched. And a lot of strikeouts, 181, and in 33 games started. Like, this is the most he's pitched ever, and he's having his best year. And so his expected stats are below average on Baseball Savant, below the 50th percentile. So expected batting average, how people hitting the ball against him is going to be generally assumed to be a base hit. That is below average. Expected ERA is not crazy. It's in the 61st percentile, but like you would expect somebody who has the season that he had had that number be in the 95th percentile. And so looking at his pitching run value, it's in the 99th percentile. His fastball run value, 94th. Breaking run value, 99th again. So not so much a darling, but opposite of a darling, and he's doing well on the field, and it is kind of implying that he's getting lucky on the mound. But he also throws 9 different pitches, so he keeps hitters off balance, and he had a great year. So kudos to him. He made his first All-Star team, and we'll see what happens next year. But if I were a betting man, I would say he has a significantly worse year next year.
A little bit of regression to the mean, but it is also interesting. Like, we look at these analytics, and it just kind of turns everything into numbers for us. But at the end of the day, like, there's such a human aspect too. Like, maybe he's probably aware of these issues. He probably knows that next season he's got to do something different or something better. So, like, sure, we're going to expect some regression to the mean, but also maybe he changes his play style a little bit, maybe emphasizes certain pitch styles over others, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But like you're saying, the way in which he produced this year doesn't seem sustainable. Of course, no ill intent against him, but that's just kind of what the analytics are telling us.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think it's hard to do a baseball analytics podcast, at least for beginners, without talking about Moneyball.
True.
It's a great film. Love watching it. I've already watched it multiple times. Saw it this summer and had to go back and rewatch it again. So
and you're not even a big baseball guy.
Not at all. No,
yeah.
But I love the movie. It's great. How do you think that movie, or maybe that at least just mindset of management, kind of shifted the MLB?
For sure. People who haven't seen the movie, basically, Billy Beane and his staff kind of optimized their team in a way that allowed them to not spend a ton of money on these superstar players. I mean, it's Oakland. You have a small market. You're never going to be able to have these guys. You got to home grow them or go get people like Island of Misfit Toys, like they say in the movie. And so they optimized these players that they were able to bring in a way that they won, what was it, 20 games in a row, 21 games in a row. I forget the specific number, but they set the American League record for winning games in a row. And so that movie is great to think about now, because I don't want to like credit the movie as being the start of this, but the concepts in the movie for sure were the start of this deeper analytical thinking process for teams and being able to optimize your dudes. And you're not always going to get the superstar. You're not always going to be Los Angeles. You're not always going to be the Yankees. So you have to use what you got and compete with the big boys. And we kind of saw this in last year's World Series. It was Arizona Diamondbacks and Texas Rangers. Two teams that absolutely nobody thought were going to make the World Series.
Big contrast to this year's World Series.
Absolutely, yeah. Like probably the furthest it could get.
Yeah.
And those teams dominated. Like they were able to go on little runs just with their guys, and everyone gets hot at one point. And kind of like you were saying, like when I thought of, people going above their expectations and like looking at what's actually happening on the field. Like there's this thing called the eye test, right? That kind of goes across all sports, but especially in baseball, like that is kind of the counter argument sometimes to this analytical movement. And people using the eye test is basically just like, I'm at the game, I'm looking at this dude, he's not doing great.
I saw it happen.
Yeah, exactly. He like, this guy's a dog. I like this guy because of just how he looks. And so getting away from that is kind of important, but also you got to kind of have a mix of that to be successful. And baseball is very largely a field game. You can lose your job by making one bad decision in the World Series, or even in the regular season. If you do it a bunch of times, like you're probably going to be out of a job. And so you got to have a feel for the game, but also manage it with this analytical perspective.
Now Moneyball and like kind of the concepts in it sort of, I guess, initiated this wave of analytics, or at least played a big part of it. And then at the end of the movie, he's offered a job by the Boston Red Sox, correct?
Yep.
And now just fast forward 20 some odd years, however many years since that took place. It's kind of popularized, right? Like every team these days is using analytics. So is there still a way to get an edge? Like is there still an edge to be found, I guess?
For sure. There's crazy pitching machines that happen now. Just thinking as an example, like there's pitching machines that will replicate any pitcher in the league. It will replicate their spin rates. It'll replicate how their ball moves, their arm angle. You can basically be hitting off the guy without seeing him on the mound, and you can hit live batting practice during or under the cage or in the cages before the game. So there are, and every team has their analytics department, right? And so you can have more like people who lean heavily into the expected stats or not, and then lean into power numbers or batting average numbers. And so teams like the Guardians and the Tigers, like our interviewer said, our interviewee said, those teams are very impressive because the Guardians have pretty much nobody who is going to hit 1 million home runs outside of Jose Ramirez, and their team is really optimized, especially like 2 years ago. I remember they just got base hits. There was people on base every single inning. They made the National League American League Championship Series, and they lost to the Yankees. Yeah, they lost to the Yankees. Or did they? No, did they blow past the Yankees? I'm not sure. Whatever, they made it far in the postseason.
A deep run, either way.
Exactly. Blanking on it, but that team had nobody who hit for power, but they were able to use their guys, optimize getting on base, and kind of straying away from this kind of power movement and going back to this old school, batting average type of player. And it worked out for them, but that's not saying they didn't use their analytics to look at their players and know which guys were able to do this and reach base in the way they did and find success with it.
It's the game within the game, like once you think you found the edge, then everybody thinks they have that edge. So then you kind of go take a different avenue. And if that means going back to kind of more classic, traditional stats, or maybe getting more of a feel, like you said, going back to the eye test a little bit more, it's just interesting, seeing how it just kind of progresses. And, one thing leads to another, and then it just goes back and forth. And you think, oh, this is the new wave. Now we're going to go all after power hitters. Then a team, like you're saying, the Guardians is going to be like, okay, fine, take all the power hitters. We'll get on base then. You're paying all these guys big money. We'll bring in some cheap contact guys, and we'll get the job done the same way pretty much.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all we got for you guys. This has been the very first episode of the Stick and Balls podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Trey.
And I'm Archie.
And we will see you next time.